Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Disclaimer! Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news, reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit education or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. This video was made for entertainment purposes and is transformative in...
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
As in the beginning, I belong to the front. You belong to the tail. When the foot seeks the place of the head, a sacred line is crossed. Know your place. Keep your place. Be a shoe.
You really don't understand, do you? Hey, man, don't you realize in order for us to make this thing work, man, we've got to get rid of the pimps and the pushers and the prostitutes and then start all over again clean.
I just wanted to see you, man.
Hey, how's y'all doing, everybody? This is We Up Report. I'm your host, Mrblowsurmind, and welcome. If this should be happening your first show, this is a new channel, and it's an old channel for others who are seeing it on the original channel, which is Mrblowsurmind, right? So, welcome to each and every one of you who clicked on this video. Hope that you stay, subscribe, share, comment, like, dislike, and if you should happen to hit that subscribe button, don't forget to hit all notifications. You know how they doing. And again, this might be on for those who've seen on the new show, but on the old show, you know what the business is. Been around for a long time. Many of you who might just be hearing me on the We Up Report, been around, been suppressed, but if you like, go ahead and do what you got to do. Well, We Up Report, what we do is we find things that are in our world that affect us, that sometimes we have to have certain people have their articulation from their standpoint, their opinions as to how they're seeing it, and you could be agree or disagreeing with it. But I primarily do news, and will be probably doing some of the things that I do see lately that has been, the shortage of shows that are now on YouTube due to them clearing out and making it a lot harder for a lot of people to just survive. So I'm trying to do this as a way to provide another avenue for some of the things, since everybody's just kind of tied up with the things that they are doing. So anyway, welcome to We Up Report. You might have clicked on this video due to the thumbnail, so just in case you've seen it, let me go ahead and let's show everybody that thumbnail that we got over there, right? So according to my thumbnail, we got teaching history shames white kids. Let me say that again. Teaching history shames white kids, right? Some of them have talked about recently what we've seen or heard about on The View. And the topic seems to be about CRT. We know they just had I think election in Virginia, right? And in that election, some of the topics, the main topic was about CRT, critical race theory, and this whole thing about history being taught and how the dichotomy is basically, certain people feel a certain kind of way because if you tell the true history, one, people feel they'll be shamed and they don't think it has a appropriate place for young ones to know. But then there's the other side to it that said that, well, if we're going to talk about anything, let's talk about it in its entirety, and that way they can discern, make the best judgment, and have a full understanding, whether it's just the assumption that we think that people know what took place until you have conversations and understanding and realize that what they teach here, they don't teach over there. And so what happens is there's a misunderstanding between the both. And so to cut the monotonous out between the two, let's go ahead and just put it right down the middle. But, people are going to feel the way they're going to feel. And so we want to understand, why does teaching history shames white kids and white people in particular? Again, this isn't right here just to tell what it is, and from the perspective of myself as we report. And that is going to be the thumbnail, and that's going to be the topic we're going to be on, right? So, again, that was Condoleezza Rice, based on the conversation she had about a week ago. She was on The View. And on that conversation, she was saying things from her being Secretary of State, a person who's supposed to be Kundalini. She got all the degrees. She's been highly in position in government. And she put her input in talking about CRT and how she felt like CRT shouldn't be taught to little ones. And that has been the theme in the country for those who are using CRT, in my estimation, as a way to really kind of shun off or block for having the conversation about history. But really, when you think about history in itself, history is really not taught in grade school. So why do they keep talking about 5 and 7-year-olds, 5 and 10-year-olds, or 7 and 10-year-olds about history, when primarily many of us, when we were in school learning history, maybe it's more required in high school to have at least 3 years of the subject of history. But in grade school, you may get a particular holiday. You may get a paper and may to do something on that to learn about, these American so-called icons of this history that they teach. But it's not really a course that you go in and you study particularly history in itself. So we're now understanding why people are trying to, convolute that up and make it seem as if like really in grade school they're teaching history like that anyway. But so there seemed to be a deflective tactic, right? But once again, on The View, they decided to have another conversation the other day. Not that I sit around and watch The View, but I did get to see the clip on it, and I ended up getting the article on it. And I thought it was very interesting about the back and forth, as I will show you here, the article that had came up. And it's talking about how The View, Whoopi Goldberg fires back at Michelle Tafoya for suggesting skin color shouldn't matter. Let me say that again. The View, Whoopi Goldberg fires back at Michelle Tafoya for suggesting skin color shouldn't matter. As an avid watcher of other people's shows and having a show myself, I hear a lot of people who are disseminating information about, race, history, and those are from different, let's say, generations. Different generations dealt with how being in this country and of the time and their perspective and their experiences have different outlooks and have different ways of articulating about that. But the younger generation, some who try to get out of it, always talk about pro-black and those people who are stuck on black and white and talk about how it's a construct and that how it's not real. Now, I understand when they talk about color and black and white and they talk about nobody's actually black and nobody's actually white. You're being literal, right? And then some people use the fact, well, in law, okay. But the construction, as they say, the construct of it is real. Can we all agree that there has been a construct in the game called race, just like they talk about over in India, the caste system? In the United States, it has its own brand of a caste system. Some will deny to say it's more about class, but when you really boil it down, take it to its inception, and some people will even deny, even say that, let's just say that when they talk about transatlantic slave trade, and when they talk about the ordeal of black Americans in this country who have been ostracized through the ordeal of this history in this country, we are starting to hear that maybe that was not as being reported. And there are people who are debating back and forth about that. So, color, from that understanding, when we look at the history and the reality in the United States, when they show you black, white water fountains, colored, right? So that means that there's been a long period of time in this country that the dynamic of color and people passing is real. Now you're a little bit newer in the game of life and being here, then it's not so prevalent with you. You're coming on the end part of what then transpired through time of history of let's just say we're going to use 1865, and then we get here in 2021. Many of you are just, maybe millennials, right? Some of you may have just been born in the 90s, right? A lot has happened before the 90s and born in the 80s. A lot had already happened. A lot of it done went clandestine. A lot of it is being, as they say, the game has evolved. And because maybe, depending on the household you came out of, who raised you, who reared you, what was the conversation, what were the do's and don'ts, what was the talk, what was the putting you on code, all those entail, you have a better outlook at the world of the United States. And so skin color has been very prevalent. The race game has been very real, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. But the truth of the matter is, it's real. You can wish it away. You can try to use tactics of there's no land called black. You want to talk about the fact that in law this, okay, but the people didn't have no problem designating you this to denote this is you. Right? So anyway, let's get into what happened here, just in case some of y'all didn't see this. So, so you see on your screen there, and it goes in, it's going to go into the topic here. Go ahead. So, okay, so you see, okay. Right? So then it talks about how the NBC sports reporter began her argument by telling a story about her son and the kids he used to be friends with when he was younger. According to Tafoya, her son's first best friends were a black boy and a Korean boy. But as the years went on, they stopped seeing each other because they began hanging out solely with their affinity groups. Okay? Affinity groups. Keep that in mind, right? So when you talk about affinity, you're talking about natural, liking, attraction, leaning, proclivity, the soulmate, a kinship, or kindred, or resemblance, right? So she goes on to tell the story about how her son and had friends of other persuasions. And as she's going to articulate in this story, it goes on, it talks about a little bit more. And it goes to the point itself. So now she says, why are we even teaching that the color of the skin matters, right? Why are we even teaching that the color of skin matters? Now, I hear a lot of people, talk to people, and we have this French about us, right? We get to this we, right? We. When really it's not we. Now, I know we all want to be inclusive. We all feel like when we talk about Americans and stuff like that, that it's all inclusive. But we know the history. If you don't know the history, you've always been fighting to be inclusive. So people who've always been fighting to be inclusive can never say we when you always are the outside person trying to get in, and somebody's always telling you no, and then you're trying to find ways to make them to accept you. And there's some of us who we can go on with our life and not care about it, but there's many of us, they got organizations, there's people, and again, talking about teaching and code of households to be inclusive. Matter of fact, when you go back and if you heard that video where Condoleezza Rice was talking, she talked about how her parents told her that these people, and she would never thought that this country, because of its biasness, there would ever be a time. But she said that's their problem and you just keep moving forward. Now, all that sounds good. It's kind of like they say, Michelle Obama says, when they go lower, you go higher. If you want to tackle a motherfucker, right, when they go lower, you got to go lower, right? Otherwise, they're going to run your ass over, right? I mean, that's just what it is, right? So we don't keep 100 like that. But anyway, so that's what they say. You go higher, right? So to say we in this understanding is to say we're all inclusive. We all had our input as into whether the color of skin was going to be, considered or not. Everybody else know damn well, if we're going to be honest, the skin game, the color game was when the time you came. Now, we're not talking about people who just recently come here, who got maybe a generation or two. We're talking about people who've been here from the inception of the game. Color has always been a part of the game. And as long as you understood that and understand the rules and regulations of that game, you were not included. You even had the Supreme Court say that you are not included, right? And so to say and have a conversation and then be talking with somebody on the other side of the table who is a person who is of, in this case, black-skinned, and you being a person with white skin, and to say, why are we teaching? There is no we. We is trying to be inclusive, but we had no input. We, when you have this thing that you call the Constitution, says we the people, but if we the people meant the people who you were subjugating as POWs of this country, you wouldn't have to make a 13th, 14th, or 15th Amendment. They just would be included in the we. So no, you had to make an exception in the rules and regulations to add in as an amendment to include them. So the we and we the people that a lot of us like to be regurgitating and saying is really not you the we the people, it's they the we, and you are as an add-in. So to say this is a fallacy and to say that the skin color matter and why are we teaching that, it was already in the part of the game from the inception before you and I got here, right? And so she said based on this skin color game, she said it dissolved the friendship between the black boy and the Korean boy of her boy. Right? And she goes on and, we call this like a kickstand move. A kickstand on the bike is how you prop the bike up and keep it from falling. Well, a lot of people go to this till they go to move when they're trying to, not be very recollection or have a good recollection of history, and they want to be about the now and not talk about what happened before. Well, they say, because to me, he said, what matters is your character and your value. Now, to her, that's personal. That's you, an individual. The game of white supremacy, the game of racism is never an individual game. I need to say that again. Race in itself white supremacy, standard of civilization is not an individual game. It is a team sport. It has many institutions and players and people who are calling the scriptures to the game and how it goes and everything. So it sounds good to say character and values because it's kind of like taking a page out of Martin Luther King talking about content of character. With that all being said, what did he get? Now, people love to take the remarks and say that the words that he said were eloquent and they mean so much, but the actions never have led up to what his words said on the other side of the table, right? But everybody loves to regurgitate talking about character, okay, and the values. See, when you're on the table, right? So, Whoopi, according says, but you live in the United States. You know that color skin has been mattering to people for years. She said in a response to FOIA question why they can't be changed. Okay, now listen to that. You live in the United States. The other night I was watching news, and I think it was Fox News. Sean Hannity. Was it Sean Hannity? Was one of them. Tucker, one of them. And he was talking about how Joe Biden was somewhere, had made some speech, and he was talking about he was, I don't know, asking for forgiveness or trying to acknowledge the fact that, maybe the United States has been racist. And they said they can't believe that he's saying it. Right? See, there's a denial. There's a denial of what done happened. And if it's only unilateral, right? It's only unilateral. That's from your side. But see, nobody wants to respect the other side because you know what the other side going to say. And so to discredit that, we're not even going to consider what you even got to say, so we're going to ignore it, and it's only what we say, just like what they say the dictionary means what we say. So who is we again? That French keep coming up, but that we has nothing to do with our input in that game. So, again, we'll be letting you know, we in the United States, right? And color of skin has been mattering for people for years. I don't know what you mean by years, right? So anything under 10 would be a decade, right? I mean, 10 and above is decade, right? So years would just like it's only been for a couple, no. Centuries. No. You got to say centuries. We can't try. See, that's the problem. I know, again, people feel some kind of shame, but you got to ask yourself the question, what's worse? To feel the shame of what you claim you had nothing to do with it. You have no input. You feel no way towards it. But the people who have, to this day, you know who said that, to this day, right? To this day, still feel the wrath, still smell the scent, still feel the bruise and the pain of what you say no longer exist. So she asked the question why that can't change. Now, that's what now when we say we on this is the other side of the table saying, why can't it change? See, but you're asking the question. You're asking the people who on the other side of the table are asking the same question. Who is it that we need to ask why it hasn't changed? Why is it that this person don't know that you don't call these people to talk about it? You need to go to the people who created and are the the movers and the shakers of it, right? But that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of them. We know that, right? And Whoopi goes in and says that we need white people to step up and do that. She's being honest with it, right? We need white people to step up and do that. So when she asked why we can't do that, Whoopi answered with, well, white people need to do that. But But listen to what she says after that. She goes on, this Tafoya argued that white people have in fact been doing that since the Civil War. Wait a minute. 1865, we in 2021, what is that? 100 and what's that? 100 and what's that? 40? Well, not 100. 140, 130. About 136 years. Huh? About 136? Yeah, about 136 years, right? No, maybe 40, 50, no, 156 years. I'm talking about. I'm shortchanging, right? I'm out change, homie. Right? They talking about 156 years. Can you show us? Now the question really becomes, and this is something that they got to ask themselves. White folks, ask yourself this question. As this Tafoya says that white people have in fact been doing it since the Civil War. Give us the exact date. Are we talking about because civil rights of 1965? Are we talking about, Board of Education 1954? I'm talking about the voting. Is that what we're talking about? Is that what the change is? Right? Is that what the Civil War? Matter of fact, when you think about the history of Civil War and how our ancestors were out there after the Civil War, nowhere to go, had to make those contraband camps. Got enlisted in the military, got paid, put them in banks that you created, Freedmen Bureau banks, and then you bust the bank and took all their money after they started setting up shop. 40 acres and a mule, renege on that, send you back down there to be contract laborers to a person who was never going to pay you, never was going to be right with you. Is that what you're talking about? Been doing since the Civil War? I don't think that's what you meant, but that's the facts to that. Right? That's the facts to that, right? So Whoopi says, no, they haven't. No, they haven't. She said, when you have a country, or let's talk about a state, where somebody can be hung from a tree and it's okay. Well, it was okay. It was okay in the South. Now, wait a minute. Everybody likes to, again, it's very deflective. When you talk about history, one tries to shy it off on somebody else. They did it, but we didn't do it. Well, who was building the shit up in the North? And that's a lie to say that there was no slavery in the North. But see, it's always to be able to be deflective and put it somewhere else. You're going to have to accept it in its entirety. You're not going to accept it in its entirety? And okay, you don't have to accept it in its entirety. Then you just keep playing. You're just the dog chasing the tail. Never going to catch it, right? So as long as that keep going, that allows you to keep prolonging it and keep doing what you're doing, right? But, the world and the country is getting tired. Right? And then she talks about how people did it all the time. People would run you down. And that wasn't that long ago. Matter of fact, that was so long ago to the fact that, let's see. There is if I'm not mistaken, there's a book. I own this book. I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to put it on my screen here. Yeah, see? Any of y'all own this book here? It's called Without Sanctuary, right? Talks about how, it has some pictures in there that are showing actual footage of the events of hangings. Give you some of the history and the story. You get to see of the times. They talk about how, souvenirs, picnics, these are the glory parts of American history. But I know everybody don't want to talk about it because it brings a certain feeling, but it is what it is, right? It is what it is. So it's not like what Whoopi said was not valid, what she said. There are plenty of history books out here to show you that how real that was, right? And matter of fact, when you even think about it, going back to the part with the child, I remember not too long ago, there was a video that went viral. Any of y'all remember that? There was a video that went viral where a young man was talking about CRT. And he was talking about how he didn't want to teach his child CRT. And the video went viral, and a lot of people, he's a good father. He's going to teach his child that, work hard and right? Right? So let me show you something here, just for those who might have to remember this. And let me show you, because remember, LaFoya is saying about how her white son, who had a black, there was a black child and a Korean child, and then based on them learning certain things in school, it made them seem like, she said, well, the affinity to group with their own. But is that really true? Or the truth of the matter is that the existence that each one of them has, they're going to have different lives. When kids are little, they're very honest. Right? They tell the truth. They don't see the things. Just like, let me show you this, and I'll continue this when I get back. Let me show you this, and we'll be right back.
Daddy teach you can be anything in this world that you want to be, right? Don't Daddy teach you that?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you're black or white or any color.
Doesn't matter if you're black, white, brown, yellow, right?
Black.
And how we treat people is based on who they are and not what color they are.
And if they're nice and smart.
See, this is how children think right here. Critical race theory wants to end that. Not with my children. It's not gonna happen. My baby's gonna know that no matter what she wants to be in life, all she has to do is work hard, and she can become that. But we need to stop CRT. Period. Point blank. Children do not see skin color, man. They love every. Daddy. Daddy teach you can be anything in this world that you want to be, right? Don't Daddy teach you that?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you're black or white or any color.
Doesn't matter if you're black, white, brown, yellow, right?
Black.
And how we treat people is based on who they are and not what color they are.
And if they're nice and smart.
See, this is how children think right here. Critical race theory wants to end that. Not with my children. It's not gonna happen. My baby's gonna know that no matter what she wants to be in life, all she has to do is work hard, and she can become that. But we need to stop CRT. Period. Point blank.
All right, so we're back, right? So, why I don't belong, Daddy? So, we can understand the young brother out there who got his daughter, and he wants to, again, it talks about how that even evil people don't even do evil things to their own children, right? So everybody wants the best for their children, whether you're a good person, bad person, evil person, whatever it is, everybody wants the best for their own children. So we understand that this young brother here is thinking that CRT and that is going to taint his children, but is it really about your children, right? Or is it about protecting other people's children? But CRT is really something that is taught supposedly as you get into law school, and if they're going to teach history, it's not in grade school. So we're going to have to get into the understanding of why they're using the CRT and what is it really pertaining to, because it really is not making sense. But a lot of people have been talking about it. But the point is, as you see on my screen there, it talks about why I don't belong, Daddy, right? And let me show you something that, they were just talking about, like in that topic. Matter of fact, I think today they were talking about how in Virginia they had that governor's race, and the person who won was for the CRT people who didn't want that to be taught. So they kind of feeling like a victory, right? Some people trying to say, well, it wasn't the percentages more about, but it was more about 59% about supporting this candidate based on his stance about CRT. And so I want to show you there was another governor's race, and I think it was a campaign manager, if I'm not mistaken. And let me show you the article here of that, right? Now this article had came out. It says white children suffer when kids of color are taught they belong, says Connecticut Republican. Let me say that again. White children suffer when kids of color are taught they belong, says Connecticut Republican. Now again, this is about, it was about a school board campaign manager that was in Guilford, Connecticut. And supposedly she chose her words poorly, is what they had said. I don't know how you choose your words poorly when you said it. But it was stated that she stated that helping kids of color to feel they belong has a negative effect on white Christian or conservative kids. Let me say that again. Helping kids of color to feel they belong has a negative effect on white Christian or conservative kids. What does she mean by that? Helping kids of color to feel they belong. And why does it have a negative effect on white children? So, again, on The View, LaFoya says that why are they teaching race, and that race made the black and the Korean boy not play with my boy anymore. But as I was saying before I went into that, and I said I would come back to, was the fact that actually what happens for those who have gone into schools that are diverse and have friends of other persuasions, what end up happening is life. You can be friends with people of other persuasions through grade school and possibly can end up going to the same high school. But once you graduate and, the experiences, let's say the environment that one comes out of may not be a strong economical, and may have to work, may have to get a scholarship through sports or something like that. Well, another person, regardless, was going to go to college because the money was going to be there. So those paths are going to be different based on that. And then the associations as we get older, as in that article had talked about, said about affinity group. Birds of the feather flock together is what they say, right? Birds of the feather flock together. And so with that being said, here's a woman. Now here's a woman of the campaign manager, and happened to try to make it seem like it was a folks pod, but I don't know how you saying that when you say helping kids of color to feel they belong has a negative effect. That means that it's okay for children of color, and I know a lot of our people are like, we're not people of color. I know. But you know that's all inclusive when they say that. Even though, you know, they're not being specific, but you know that means us as well, right? But we know we identify specifically, but when they're talking, this is everybody, and then the words that were being used, we have to be in this group as well. And so that just means that if you make anybody who is non-white to feel like they're somewhat equal, that they have the same opportunities, that the history may show them to be in such a light, that it's going to have a negative effect on white, white Christian. And another thing that many people, when you call yourself a Christian, do you know in history what Christian really mean? Do you really know? All you got to do is go look at Virginia. The Virginia Law 1680, Section 4. And if you go in there and look at that, you'll see what the Christian is. And Christian don't necessarily mean you. And a lot of people like to say, I'm a Christian. And I'm talking about being non-white. But you don't understand, Christian don't necessarily mean what you think Christian means. So as you see what she has stated, she talked about white Christian and conservative kids, right? And supposedly her name was Mary Beeman, right? And this was supposed to have been a comment she made at the Yukon Educational Forum. And again, it was about critical race theory. And that was supposed to be on the agenda. And so her saying what she said, you know, they were talking before the rally, it claims, and they were rallying against critical race theory being taught in schools. Now, again, they keep using this critical race theory when they talk about this is something that was done with lawyers. And if you don't talk about this, this will be an academic standing. So why have they tried to, triculate this down into the grade schools and try to use kids as the cannon fodder to make it seem like how it would be detrimental if you taught kids about their color and make them feel apprehensive and feel like being white is bad. But again, history isn't taught that low. Is it just the fact that people just don't want to, the real history? They like the sanitized, good smelling, all make you great history? So what does that do for one? If you tell the truth and this one is damaged, but if you keep it the way it is, then on the other side, aren't they damaged? Oh, it's okay for you to be damaged. Oh, okay, I get it. All right. So anyway, there was a 20-year board member named Bill Bloss, and he was trying to figure out what exactly was the content that was claimed to be appropriate. Because she said they took her words out of content and made it not right. And it's like, everybody like, well, how can you make that appropriate anyway? Try to spin it the best way you can. No matter how you turn it, it's going to be still not right. And so, accordingly, she comes back and still try to spin and clean it up. She came in trying to say that she was pointing at the Guilford students. Then she said Judeo-Christian values. What are these code words she's saying? Judeo-Christian. That's like the Jews who denounced Judaism, who picked up and became Christians under the values of being a Christian, because now, based on what had happened, and Jesus is now Christian, and he's no more Jew, and that the Christian way is the only way now, and Judaism takes a backseat to Christianity, right? So what are they really saying in that, right? Jews and the Christians, right? And so they believe, and she was saying that they're being bullied into submission by liberal teachers and classmates. And based on what she said, she was going to stand on her square and say, you know what, I ain't stepping down. I don't care what y'all say. Right? So she was going to stand on it, right? So she meant that. So here is a situation, again, according to what the view that LaFoyer was thinking, that teaching, right, teaching history makes, people not associate with their children. But look at the people who are in the positions, teachers, legislators, Board of Education people who can have impact on really the mindset of the children, right? Like when these teachers are in these classrooms and maybe they are, you know, feel some kind of way, and they teaching amongst, as they say, kids of color. How long will it take for you or the parent or you as the student to find out when your teacher threw a monkey wrench in your learning? Many of us have gone back and if we have really evaluated and look at what our school have taught us and what we had to use in life and wondering the stuff that they gave us, did they throw a monkey wrench in there? Was that part of a facet of the tentacles of this machine that they call white supremacy? Is that part of that? That they have people in positions who do things that could be detrimental and they take you a lifetime to figure out? And so now what you see really in the social media is a lot of people who've taken on that personal, the PhD, personal history or personal development of their own education, learning what they feel fit and what they needed to do and have teach their own curriculum. And so their intelligence is based on their own. And some people seem to be a lot more smart than they would ever be in a school. It doesn't mean that they, the thing is, the system is not going to grant it because it is through their, you know, curriculum and indoctrination and them certifying that you have passed, whether they were accepted or not, right? Become, you know. But anyway. So with that being said, going back to the situation there with the Whoopi situation, right? The View, right? So that was a View, right? So let me. How about this? Let's do this. I could go. We could go back there, right? Right? Because it said that. Because see, like saying kids belong, but you got people in other ways that could just have so much effect. Let's put it like this. I want to show you this particular video here because the story in it. It's going to be a young man who's in quest of trying to get some information, trying to find out who these people were according to what he read in books. And who he believes they might be, because they also may be people he's trying to trace in his own family. But he goes to this place, he's going to meet an individual, and by chance, this individual is very knowledgeable of the history of the place, and he's going to reveal to him some things. And this story in itself is kind of like the same thing when you're talking about teaching history. They have their way of teaching the history and tell you that, you know what, this is who was this is what we say, and this is the facts. But then you have people who've been there from the inception, and they know from generation upon generation what really happened, but no, they're being suppressed and not able to be heard. So when they say something, it's going to contradict to what you thought you knew, and somebody's going to tell you from their facts. It may blow your mind. So anyway, let me let you hear this, and I'll come back after this. So check this out, and I'll be right back.
In Livingston, the main population is Garifuna. So the Garifuna language is actually Arawakan. This is a family that stretches all the way from Paraguay to Puerto Rico. Well, there used to be a language called Taino that is now extinct, but this was all part of the Arawakan family. And Garifuna actually happens to be one of the most widely spoken Arawakan languages in the Central American.
You from America?
Sí.
You?
Sí. También.
What brings you guys here?
Las Garífunas.
That's difficult to see. That's not easy to see.
No.
No, Garifunas don't exist anymore, homeboy.
Yeah, only Livingston.
We're going extinct.
Exactly. How many?
A long time ago, this was all black. All a sea of blacks. A long time ago. But now, we've lost. We're going extinct. All these businesses, there's no blacks working. It's all Mayans. My culture is totally going
gone.
kaput. We're trying to save little bit. I'm a leader here.
Oh yeah.
I'm Philip Flores. If you look in the internet and the books, I'm in the Lonely Planet, the Rough Guy.
Oh really?
Yeah, man. We're fighting to save much of what is left of Garifuna. They use Garifuna to pull tourists. But when you read all the books, everything, when you go Livingston, you will see a different culture, a whole different anomaly. That is used, we're just being used as a puller.
But not.
But when you get here, you say to yourself, where are they? Because we don't exist. It's like we're non-existent. When you guys come, the first thing they pull you on that side to the foreign hotels. So you support them.
Right.
They're not, but they're not in cahoots with us to say, oh man, you guys should go see the Garifuna. They're selling you waterfalls. They're selling you White Beach. They're selling you their product. They don't include us. We are totally out of it. Right now, we're fighting to save the educative system, the Garifuna language, the Garifuna way of doing things. You know, our cuisine, our art, our culture is totally not here. This is all Chinese. So you come here to see Garifuna.
Yeah.
Very interesting. What do you know about Garifuna?
I know a little bit about the language.
What is the language?
Garif. But I don't. I'm trying to like find just some speakers that can talk about the language like you are right now. And
the language has totally gone kaput. That language there is very little left with the language. We're more speaking French.
More French.
The Garifuna is French. When the French
like the numbers, right?
The numbers, the weekdays, lundi, mardi, jeudi, mercredi, vendredi, samedi. Most of the words, window, fenêtre, you know, à midi, the names of the animals. The French was a higher language at that time, so so the people aspired to speak French. So most of the French, when they help us out in the war against the British, no, es que that language is a mixture of French and Arawak.
Right.
The Arawak.
And Carib, right? A little Carib.
Why Carib?
I think, were they like mixing with the islanders? Is that it?
Who are the Carib?
They're from South America, right? Or like the Guyanas.
Yeah. Well, who are they?
I'm not sure.
You have to do your history, friend.
Yeah.
Where do you think the black people here come from?
I'm not sure. It's either like slave ship or they came from Africa, right? What do you think?
We've never been African.
Never?
We've never been African.
They don't really say on...
We're not really Africans. We are the Caribs.
Right.
We are the Caribs. Our ancestors are the Caribs. We man this. We control this. We inhabited this. Yeah. The sea was named for us, the Caribbean. We are the Caribs. The Africans came after. They came around the Cape Horn. They had, coming from Africa, they had to come to 5 different seas to come into around the Cape Horn in Brazil.
Right.
The Africans you find Jamaica, African, Cuba, African, Haiti, African. But they can't speak Carib nor Garifuna. They don't speak Arawak. They speak Patois.
Creoles and Patois.
They speak Patois. You know, that's a whole different, that's a mixed Creole. A mix of African and English. Instead of saying where you're going, they say where you're going. Instead of saying come here, they say Koya. Who is there? Who did they? That's a Creole. That are the Africans.
Right.
right? My language is completely different from that.
Yeah, it's Arawak.
You know, the Jamaica, when you're hearing people say Ayasata Masagana, that's a whole complete different language.
Completely.
They have to adhere to the white man's language. They be whipped. So in order to get that whip away from, I have to try and understand you.
It makes sense.
I'm the historian.
I like
here.
it.
It's by fluke we met, but you have internet?
Yeah, we do.
Look at Google Philip Flores.
Philip Flores, is that?
Yeah, Google, just look. My name is PHILIP FLORES of Livingston. Of
That's
Livingston. Look for it.
How many people speak Garifuna here?
We're only 12,000 here.
12,000. And do all of them speak, or is it?
We're fighting to teach that right now. Well, this is really at risk and endangered, you know, so this is my culture, so we have big effort into saving it. Mostly our emphasis is on the kids. So they don't
What's that? Do the kids learn Garifuna?
They have to. Only that the school is the hurricane wrecked us, you know. Did you go to the village?
No, we just started walking down this way. Yeah.
No, you've not been to the Garifuna village?
Why did they come here? Was it?
They come here during the Civil War. When the Civil War in Guatemala, the war never reached here. So they come running in for safety.
Hey, you sitting here watching the video. Why you sitting there? Put your hand on that like button, click it, thumbs it up, share this video, comment. You can like or dislike it. We don't care about that. And also, if you ain't over here and subscribe, what you waiting on? Get yourself over there and subscribe to get on up to We Up Report. So you can stay up, because we're going to keep you up. That's how you help keep this channel going. You can also do some monetary donations. We'll tell you about that later. But right now, wake yourself up, like, share, and comment. And don't forget, when you subscribe on that button, hit that put all notifications. And we are back, right? So, in that clip there, that was the history of a brother from Guatemala that was talking about the Garifuna. I think that's how you say that. It was a young man who was going there, I guess doing some traveling, and he was trying to find some people who knew the history and who he thought he was going to see when he got there. He just happened to run across this brother named Flores, who happened to just be a historian, and on the fly top of his head, you heard the conversation. There's a real video of that in its entirety. I just gave you the still shot and you got to hear the conversation. So, again, you know, what we're talking about here is how they say that history makes certain people feel some kind of way by learning history. Now, I want to make the correlation here as to this here is kind of synonymous with what's going on here in the United States. Now, a lot of people are debating whether to say Aboriginal, Black Americans are Aboriginals, or you African, or, you know, there's a whole debate. There's a lot of people out here who got a lot of different information and knowledge and so forth. So we're not going to dispel none of that. Even if I use Black Americans, I'm pretty sure the affinity will still be with Aboriginals and everything else. I just use that term because that is a term that is known, but I don't get into all the legal aspects, and I understand the significance of why you name yourself the way it is. So we're still family. You understand? So those who may hear this and think that I'm not up on that, I'm on that too. But for this video and for what I do, I keep it like that until we all come to conclusive of what it's going to be. So So we see that conversation take place. We see that the elder there, Flores, sees the young man and he's giving him the history as an individual from there, giving him the ins and outs, spitting that willy bobo to him, right? And based on, I guess, the young man was thinking he was going to see something entirely different, and Flores, gives him a rundown and asks him some things when he thought he knew, and told him, hey man, you need to read some more of the history. But he has read history, but in the history doesn't give him the details to give him the exacts. And that's what they do all around the globe, right? Especially when we're talking about here in the United States. As you heard him say, that the Ganifuna language, about 12,000 people still left there that only speak it, and that they're fighting to teach it. So that's the same thing it seems like here when we talk about history and how they want the entirety of history to be taught so that the younger ones will know. Otherwise, if you don't teach them, as he said, they're going kaput. So we, Black Americans, Aboriginals, however you want to call it, that's what's happening. And it seems that there may be an all-out effort by some people to try to bury that, because bringing light to it reveals a lot of other things. Also the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, as you heard in that conversation, he was telling you how people came in and invade, how they came to a certain point, how the languages got infiltrated from what originally it had been, how the new groups amalgamated, became a new people, have taken over their culture. People who read about and come as tourism to there are actually dealing with the people who are not of those people. Black Americans, I think we can relate to this in so many different ways if you really look at it, right? And so there was more to the video, but I will give you a couple of still shots that what he showed. But again, the power of history and knowing your story, and how you have to be the one that has to tell your story. If you allow other people to tell it, the people who may be masquerading as the people who supposed to be about, may be migrant people who come amalgamated in, and the original people are somewhere being either pushed out, they're being shunned out, they're being silenced, they're being written out, right? They may change their names and you don't know, and only the people who know are the people who are them. So that was what he kind of represents. And so he goes on, he relates some more, he takes them down. Later on as they get through talking about the history and how the Civil War, he said the area that you see kind of in the background, he said that's as far as though, and matter of fact, he made that clear. He said, you see these people, look at these, they're Chinese and Hispanics and stuff. He called them Chinese. He didn't say Hispanic, he called them Chinese. So again, he says something that some people may agree, may disagree with. He said, what do you know about, the people that he was looking for? The Arawaks, right? He said they were the Arawaks. And he said that they weren't Africans. You heard him say that. Look at that brother. He said that his people, the Caribs is what he said, right? He said the Caribs. He said, what do you know about the Caribs? He said, well, I know that they might have mixed with, the invader people, but he said, well, we the Caribs. He said, well, who you think the Caribs is? He said, well, he thought that you was an African. You came there off slave ships. He said, no, we didn't come off no slave. He said, we the Caribs. We are the Caribs. But where are you going to read in your school books to tell that the black person is the Carib? They may say the name, they may give the history, and looking on Wikipedia and everything else, you may see a bleach-looking person talking about he's a Ganifuna, right? And here's Flores saying that they're trying to preserve their history, being extricated and being put out. So this young man is seeing somebody that he thought was somebody entirely different. and based on what he's read does not match up. So he's kind of blown. He's like, wait a minute, right? So we can relate to that. That's what this whole thing about history in this country is about. Preserving your history so that those who come behind you or become behind us know who you are. So they the Caribs, and they're Africans. He said Africans had to come 5 seas to come in there. They came after us. You know, there's a lot of people who debate. Matter of fact, there was something earlier I seen with, I think it was Joe Brown and Dane Calloway, and you know, kind of Joe Brown is saying that no, y'all Africans that came on boats. Dane Calloway is saying, well, prove with the boats and the fact that you claim to be, you know, and they going back what was kind of a shit show for anybody who's seen it. But there were some things being said. The video is probably gone now, but I did catch it. So, but the thing is, there is a debate as Aboriginals and those people who trying to say they're Africans, right? And again, if everybody wants to say, okay, let's put it this way. The lands are considered to be women, right? Like mothers, right? Motherland. So let's look at it like people who, if you have a family and you had a daughter, if your daughter gets married to another man, she takes on the man's last name. And I know, again, I know today with all the stuff people saying, oh, he take my name, okay, or whatever, right? But traditionally the way it's been is that you take the man's last name, right? And if y'all produce a child, the child will have the father's name primarily, right? So does that mean that, let's say for instance, if I'm the father of the daughter who's married another man and then have a grandchild, and they produce a grandchild and they name him after him, does that take away my lineage to the grandchild? That's how a lot of people are acting. If we say black people have traversed the world, we've been everywhere, and then now we want to all, you know, going back in history and just say African. We can only be African. But if we traversed over all the lands, as if your daughter gets married, has a family, and now has another name, are you still not affiliated? Are you still not blood tied? Just she got another her married name. So just because you might be here, that doesn't mean you don't want to be an African, because those who come directly from the continent today versus those who are coming to other landmass and geographical locations, there is some affinity as into relationship, but it's not direct. It is through other relationships that will take us back and take us there. And matter of fact, if we're going to use that, then aren't you opening the door for everybody? So if people believe there's only one creation, then isn't that allowing to open the door that you see what's happening in Africa right now? We have other nations that are coming in there. And if they're going to go with this, everybody originate from here, then how you going to prevent that from happening? So it's not denouncing anything. It's just that to me, it's just like we're putting our flags around everywhere and proving we were everywhere first. When somebody also believed, when you look at his so-called history and what his education at the time, he believed the world was flat. He thought if you went to a certain edge of the water, you fall off the back of a turtle, right? So how does this person now, and then when they traverse across the land, a lot of the writings and journals of the travels was talking about people who they look like the people they were seeing in Spain as well. So we know these are dark-skinned people. But people will want to argue with people here, and because they say, well, we've been here before all this, and no, we've been everywhere. So it doesn't matter. Just as he said, they're not Africans. He said the African was Jamaican, the African was Cuban, the African was Haitian. He didn't say those in the United States. You get what I'm saying? He didn't say that. But he said Jamaica, All right, South America, right? But that's Guatemala, so okay, possibly. But he did say out of his own mouth that you heard. He said Jamaica, he said Cuba, and he said Haiti, right? But he said they themselves, the Caribs, were not really Africans. And he's saying the same thing. At once upon a time, they may have been on the continent, but by traversing and branching out and being there over a long period of time, yeah, you could say at one point in time we had been Africans. That, if that's what you want to call it, right? But that don't mean immediately. And that doesn't take away our affinity and our kinship. This is just showing that we traverse and we have colonized the whole world before there was even a scene of these other people. Anyway, so he goes in after they had this conversation. He takes them and he shows a little bit of it, right? He took them down the road and he was showing them some of the things that identify as part of their culture. He walked them down and showed them some of the things. He took them in the areas that this place here that he's taking them is the area where these Aboriginal people who lived there, this is where they had been kind of pushed down into, right? And he, as an outsider coming in and traversing there and then just happened to run across him, here's somebody who was perfect for what he was trying to do. So he was telling him about what these symbols and stuff was all about. Then he takes him a little further in and he asks where was the area where they lived. He said, he just stepped in it. Now you see there, this is where the people of him, the Aboriginals of his people, are living right next to the water. They pushed them down to the water, and he started talking about the reason why he believed they got them by the water, because they done had over their history where the water comes in, washes them away. You know what happens when, tidal waves and stuff like that, it come and it washes and they got to rebuild. They made loss of life. And there's only so many of them. As he said, about 12,000 of them that only speak the original language, which means they probably are the indigenous Aboriginal people. So he told them, yeah, we're in it. The place that you're looking for, we're in it right now. And then he showed them, and then you see there, I caught that still shot there. He said, this is what they want us to be to keep us down. Right? Because he was telling them the history, how they were there, and how being secluded the way they are, and their detriment, and then they have to, tourism doesn't benefit them. And yet these are the people who they're talking about in tourism, but they don't get the benefit from them. They keep them out. And so these other people who get to, again, culture appropriate them and get the benefits of it. And these are some other peoples. And so therefore, down there, you see the American flag being there, and he was just giving them the rundown of how all that how it works and how it goes, right? And, that's the importance of knowing your history, right? So many people really don't want us talking about it because of the atrocity of that insurance policy of you got the goods, which is you got the assets, you got the cash, you got the businesses, you got the land, but they also left bad credit when it comes to morality, when it comes to as being people who are, just considered to be good people. You didn't get to hear that. They left that karma of that shame. So you can't blame everybody else for that, but they want to do that, right? So, to show you something else to tie in with this here, right? Let's go there. Let's go there. Right? Because remember, I showed you the book about Without Sanctuary, right? Book about with the hangings. So as we talk about the history, and then remember she was talking about how Civil War and how white people have been doing better or trying to eradicate racism since the Civil War. Well, let me show you something. And remember how I said it was 156 years ago? if we're going to, or 150, was it 155 years? 55, 55, 55, 56, yeah, 56, 156 years from 1865 to now. And so, saying Civil War makes it seem a long time ago, but to show you in our present day and time that something that goes back to the Civil Wars, her, LaFoya, saying to Whoopi as if to try to say how long we've been working to make this better, but we can see that even something that was at that particular time, how it was still prevalent and maybe a deciding factor in resolving this case that we all heard. Maybe y'all heard about it. Let me show you, if y'all, just in case you didn't see it, right? Slavery era Georgia law is key defense argument in trial over Ahmaud Arbery. Let me say that again. Slavery era Georgia law is key defense argument in trial over Ahmaud Arbery. Okay? So we see this case is about to bring itself to light, right? And hold on a second here. It's coming up, and one of the defense that they're trying to use in this case is pertaining to a Civil War era law that is so prevalent today that we probably didn't even know that it came from there. And this is the importance of knowing history. See, one thing to have gone through school and then they give you the fluff history, right? George Washington, I cannot tell a lie. Father, I chopped down the cherry tree. You know, all that, right? That's the real only history that you really pretty much got in grade school. And then when you get in high school, world history, modern world, early world, right? And maybe you may have African American studies, depending on what time. And, you know, that, right? So, how much history can you really learn in school like that anyway? That's going to stick with you afterwards. Not too much, right? Just enough so that you can learn enough so you can pass this test that they're about to administer, right? That's pretty much what you're going to do. So let me show you in this. Can we do that? Yeah, okay, we can. Okay. Let me show you the correlations in this, right? Because remember that conversation that LaFoya had with Whoopi, and as I said about talking about that Civil War. But let's show you in 2021 that same Civil War that you're talking about they're working on is going to be something that is going to be dealt with in this Ahmaud Arbery case, right? So according to what they talked about in this article that I had read, it was talking about the pivotal defense argument about the 3 white men who was on trial in Georgia for killing Ahmaud Arbery. Now, according to them, they were trying to make a citizen's arrest under a Civil War era law. Let me say that again. The 3 white men who are on trial for killing Ahmaud Arbery is going to try to use a pivotal defense argument and saying that they were trying to make a citizen's arrest under the Civil War era law. And that law in itself had just got repealed after they killed Ahmaud Arbery. Now, you know, this story originates in February 23rd of 2020. When you think about that time, we're about, there's 5 days in February. So we're about 18 days away from the country is basically going to go lockdown because Donald Trump is going to make the announcement on March 13th, 2020. We're going to lockdown based on for the coronavirus, right? And so this encounter happened on February 23rd, 2020. And based at the time of February 23rd, 2020, this law that they say would be legal in Georgia at the time of this happening. And it's at that time would be, for people to arrest someone based on their perception of reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Think about that. It was legal in Georgia. The Civil Era's war law that allowed people to arrest someone based on reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Now think about that. Civil War, we're talking about 1861 to 1865, right? And we as black Americans in this country, and who we was and what were we, and how did they look at us? So reasonable suspicion just because you were black. I mean, we have a term now, DWB, driving while black, right? A lot of times people say, oh, while black, right? Walking while black, sitting while black, right? Eating while black, right? So this particular Civil War law is where maybe a lot of these Karens were confronting people until it got to the point where the stances had to be made, especially in that one in New York with the bird watcher, and she called and it was videotaped, and I mean she just straight out lying, but they ended up making the Karen law, right? And had been other incidents where they decided that, well, we're going to start making it where if you false call that you can be, held liable for it, which, but that's the slow trying to take away. But again, these things have been sitting around for over 156 years. So anytime that you as a black person or in the vicinity of a white person and they believe reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion that they felt about you, they had the right. It goes all the way back to the Civil War. Now, according to that, they said that if a person had just committed a felony. Now, the thing is, it says felony. But we've seen people being in buildings, being questioned. Do you live here? Follow them to all the way to the. We've seen all kind of videos. Seeing where little boys in the store, the woman claimed that her suspicion was that he felt on her. Then when they showed the video, and he know what. It had been so many. It just was a plethora of videos that just filled us with all this, and we were just like, okay, so I guess it was so much red-handedness, right? Even seen a woman in the store push a woman and went into a whole tantrum, and then it was time to, right? But all this is systemic based on their history. And obviously they know their history, so they kind of, they use it. And so they decided that they were going to go ahead and repeal it, right? And so those who are observing about this case that's about to take place, they're saying that prosecutors will seek to convince the jury there was no felony to arrest Arbery, right? Everybody kind of remember that. I didn't want to show that. But we all remember seeing that video. And again, they say reasonable suspicion, right? So that leaves you under the discretion of the individual how they interpret it. But we remember hearing in this story when they were saying that what's their name? The father and son claimed that somebody had stole a gun out of their truck. But this was all supposed to be about him going into a building or a construction site, going in and leaving right out, right? And so, again, this is about reasonable probable suspicion, and with that in alone, it requires under the old citizen arrest law. This is where the citizen arrest law stems from, back from the Civil War era law, where they were deputized. If they seen a black person out there and about, you could apprehend them and take them in, And this law, especially in Georgia, was codified back in 1863. And, you know, this is when they talk about one day Georgia was part of the slaveholders Southern Confederacy during the Civil War. Now, they want to make it seem as if it was only during the Civil War, but it was just what it was and who they were and who they are, right? And so when you look at the United States in itself, as Whoopi eventually has said, when she talked about the hanging, and she said, well, you know, first she said, this is the United States, and then she said, well, let's make about the states. But if you collectively put the states together, you're going to get the United States. And according to, when you talk about this citizens arrest, most of the United States have codified some form of law allowing citizens to arrest. Okay? And so when they originally created these state statutes, they were passed to enable the capture of escaped slaves, not apprehend other citizens. It was all based and focused on us. And where you going, boy? You got your pass? And so when you think about how citizen arrest laws are so dangerous and have, you know, putting power in untrained hands, you see how a situation can get out of hand. Because basically, when you look at the Ahmaud Arbery story, isn't that what happened? It's like going back to in Florida with the George Zimmerman, when you're talking about what happened with Trayvon Martin. He being, as he said, a neighborhood watch. Okay, I give you that. But you're reasonable and suspicious about Trayvon Martin, who you assume based on your assumption about other burglaries that happened in the neighborhood, and you seen him cutting through the cutway. Your observation, your suspicion is warranted. Right? And then to assume, when you see him continue to do what he was doing, and to trail him, right? Now, when does Trayvon Martin become or has the right to defend himself? And it seemed like that was never put on the table. Because why? Like a citizen's arrest. Trayvon was guilty because he was an escaped slave. And when he defended himself, he was resisting arrest. And according to trial by combat, God has chosen the winner, as they say. But when it's them, oh no, now the system is going to get you. So anyway, when you go back and you look at the Ahmaud Arbery story, you talk about how it was Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and then you had the William Rowley Bryan. Now, Courtney was suspecting Arbery of a burglary, chase him in the pickup truck, as we all seen, right? Ended up getting cornered and shot to death. Now, the whole thing, when we seen the ordeal on the video, we seen how he had entered an unoccupied property. A house, they say a house, we don't know if that was a house or not. It could have been a garage, but whatever it was something being under construction. But when they talked to the owner of the people who owned it, the person who owned the property, one, they said nothing had been taken. Those who said Arbery was taking an afternoon jog, right? And they said that there was a water fountain in there, so that's possibly he went in there and got himself some water. And as he ran on, kept on his way. Now, if he was stealing something, think about this. If he's stealing something, where is he going to put it at? He on foot. Do he got a bag? What he stole, was it just something to put in his pocket? Did he got a big ass TV? He had nothing. Nothing. Right? He had nothing. The only thing he had on him is, like you said, the Civil War law, that he was a black man running, and it was reasonable suspicious being in this area. Huh? Ain't that something, y'all? Ain't that something? So, here's a woman saying that they've changed since the Civil War, and you still have laws. Matter of fact, just looking at this in itself, we as black people, this is something, I don't know if somebody will get together, make some kind of organization, or get a group of people who have that as a capacity of their profession. But we need to have somebody, an institution that goes back and look at all those laws that are still on the book. Because see, what they're trying to tell you is old laws. These are old laws. What is old law? And then when your ass is in the court or in the system, everything good. Say we say money on the wood, everything good. Put the money on the wood if the bed is good. So anything in them books, no matter if that mug go back to 1609 to 2021, if it's in that book, it's good. It hasn't been repealed. It has not been revoked. It has not been abolished. It's still good. So that's part of this code that eventually I'm going to talk about that we got to get on, because we got to have people that come in and do all these things. All these things need to be done, right? So when they talk about the difference in states and say how New York had the strictest law holding residents liable for false arrests, if no one was committing, even if they reasonably believe that they did, they leave it as no room for a mistake. They said they had to have strict laws. And if no crime was committed, then you could turn it back on them and say, you falsely had me accused to be arrested, and I can hold you liable for it. And so in Georgia, the person who was elected prosecutor, when they first looked at the Arbery case, they accepted that the citizen arrest rationale offered the 3 white men and said they should not be arrested. But ain't one of them an ex-cop? See? So, with that being said, right? And so it's funny, and I want you to take a mental check mark in your mind. They said that the ACLU Georgia chapter, now ACLU, keep that check mark in mind. Now, they the one who called this an old law. Was an example of her systemic racism and how it empowered mobs that lynched black people. More than 500 recorded cases in Georgia between 1882 and 1968. 68 is only, 53 years ago? Right? And they just recently put lynching on the books as a hate crime. Right? So, you can say that we've been working, but we see some of the old vestiges of that never left. Never left. Matter of fact, when you talk about hearing about this lynching, did you also see, shall we take, let's take one and come right back. Let's take a break and come right back. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
And since the American white man has used his control over the press and over the textbooks and over all forms of media to make it appear that he has done us a favor by bringing us here and enslaving us, rewrite history or retell history. And since the white man can't dispute this truth, it's not hate to say that we were kidnapped and brought here, it's truth. It's not hate to say that we were Jim Crow, discriminated and segregated. It's truth. It's not hate to say that the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in this country, came up with a hypocritical desegregation decision 9 years ago, which they haven't enforced yet. That's not hate.
All right, we are back, right? Huh? Isn't that right? Can't say it's hate. It's not hate. No. It's not hate, y'all. Some people like to make it seem as hate. It's not hate at all. So if we're going to tell it, we're going to have to tell it right. Right? Well, just in case y'all didn't hear about this, did y'all hear about how U.S. to pay $88 million to family victims of South Carolina church massacre? Let me say that again. U.S. to pay $88 million to families victims of South Carolina church massacre. Okay? Yep. $88 million, right? Well, this story had came up. Some of y'all might have seen, didn't hear about it, but they're talking about the families of the 9 victims killed in the BLAK South Carolina church. They had reached a settlement with the Justice Department. Keep that in mind, Justice Department, right? Remember the last one was ACLU, and then we're talking about the Justice Department on this as well, right? And how they reached the verdict, or not the verdict, but the settlement for this, they claimed it was a faulty background check that allowed Dylan Roof to purchase a gun he used back in 2015 to do the massacre. So the Justice Department will pay $88 million. They said it includes $63 million for the families of the 9 people killed and $25 million for 5 survivors who were inside the church at the time, and they had just announced this back over on Thursday. The lawyer, whose name is Bakari Sellers, he was the one who brokered this agreement. And he's talking about the oddness of the number 88. You see on your screen there, right? 88. Now, 88 to a lot of people, you don't know that 88 is referenced when you talk about white supremacy. And remember, it was the Justice Department who was the one who gave this figure, right? And so this, lawyer or the attorney, who was Bakari Sellers, he figured that this was purposeful. He believed that they used the number 88. Okay? And I'll go on a little bit more about this 88. And as he talked about how this number is typically associated with white supremacy. It's also noted that Dylan Roof had the number of bullets with him taken when he was going to do this attack. He had 88 bullets. So basically, he's saying that by them using this number 88 and what it's referenced to, he stated that they're giving a big fuck you to white supremacy and racism. He said what they're going to do with this money, they're going to build generational wealth in the black communities, right? And that's what they're going to do. They said, since you put 88 on the figure, we figured out what you're doing with that, and fuck you, and we're going to, take this money, we're going to make generational wealth for these black communities. Right? And so, again, they talked about how months before, in 2015, I think about June 17th, they talked about how Dylan Roof was arrested back on February 28th, in that 2015 in Columbia, South Carolina, by the police. And it was on a drug possession charge, right? And they said somehow, some way, there was a clerical error that allowed Roof to buy the handgun and use it in the massacre. Think about that. When you get that charge and then it's pending and you got to go to court, trying to figure out how was he able to purchase a gun after he had a drug possession charge and should have been in the system, right? And so they said some of the errors was because it was wrongly listed. The sheriff office that was on the documents, the arresting agency in the drug case seemed somehow to not match up or was not there. So when the National Assistant Criminal Background Check System, they said they found some of the information on the arrest but needed more to deny the sale. And so they sent a fax to the sheriff office. The sheriff office responded didn't have the report. And so they ended up directing them back to the Columbia Police Department. And so the operating system, that they didn't have the direct federal listing of law enforcement agencies. And so because the Columbia Police did not appear on the list, it allowed him to go ahead and get the gun that he took with him into the AME church. And so while I was on the 3-day waiting period, that's when he went back to West Columbia store and picked up the handgun. Originally, this lawsuit was thrown out by a judge, and he was writing that the examiner followed procedures, right? So there was no flaw in the system. They did according to what was done. If the error was done by the clerical error, but there was too many coincidences, really, when you think about it, there was too many coincidences, right? That allowed that procedure to follow through. So the judge was blasting the federal government and what he called an abysmal poor policy choice, right? That you allowed that to happen. That ain't got nothing to do with us, right? So, and he talking about how it runs this national database and the firearm background check, right? So he was blaming back, again, pushing the blame on somebody else, not taking accountability. There was a flaw. Or was it because maybe him using 88 and what 88 represents, knowing maybe who he was, and that's sufficient enough, and things get lost and maybe people don't get arrested. Who knows, right? We're just learning. Matter of fact, I remember reading what they talked about that the FBI lost the files on getting mugs that was part of that Stormfront. I remember they were saying they lost all the listings of who they had on there as a watch list. All of a sudden just magically disappeared, right? Okay. So also the fact that that shooting took his mother's Emmanuel, which is church, which they call the AME church, right? And they say they're claiming now again that a lot of people took some kind of they felt a little way because after all that had been done, they decided to forgive him, made it nationally, doing the Christian thing, right? And what they wrote in this article that I had seen, they said that Ruth had became the first person in the United States sentenced to death for a federal hate crime. I mean, it was only sentenced, right? But according to what they had said in this article, they believe they're getting closure. But, the pastor of AME was a state senator, right? And, they forgave. So a lot of people have just kind of shied it off and, is what it is, right? But let's look at something here. Because they use 88, right? 88 is representing in the letter H in the alphabet. The number 8 is H. So we got HH, and this is supposed to have been representative of an Aryan group. So, I mean, that would probably be Heil Hitler, right? And so it's ironic that the federal defense would use the number and how they determined that, and coincidentally using 88 and the individual who's doing the massacre and what he represented and the other things that's significant they had with 88 with himself, and they did it. So you see how Bakari Sellers as an attorney felt, and then understanding the history. But there's also some more to that 88. Matter of fact, if you ever had the book or read the book, Mind's Cough, you'll see that 88, they use the symbol of 1488, right? 88 is, again, represent the Heil Hitler, which is HH. But the 14 in itself, right? The 14 words is what they call it, right? So maybe some of y'all never heard of that before. Let me show you these 14 words, because they had a creed. They got a creed, right? They got a creed that's going on with them. So I want you to maybe see, maybe you never seen this before, right? I'll put this on the screen for you, right? What we have to fight for is the security of the existence and the increase of our race and our people, the nourishment of its children, and the preservation of the purity of the blood, the freedom and independence of the fatherland, in order to enable our people to mature for the fulfillment of the mission which the creator of the universe has allotted also to them. Every thought and every ideal, every doctrine and all knowledge have to serve this purpose. From this point of view, everything has to be examined and to be employed or to be rejected according its usefulness. Thus, no theory can stifle into a mortal doctrine, since everything serves only for life. Okay? So let's look at this creed that they got. When you talk about that 88 and what it represents and what it tied to, talk about the 14 words. And then there was a massacre tied onto it, right? And when you read that story and go back and understand what he thought was supposed to happen and how he was going to spark the wick to get it set off. So let's try to understand this creed, because see, I hear people in this corner have talked about code. Well, just use the example of the code that they got established, and maybe some of our people may understand what a code is. So somebody never talked about it. So he says, what we have to fight for is the security of the existence and the increase of our race and our people. Okay? The fight, right? Security. What is security? The safety, the surety, the immunity, the confidence, assurance, conviction, freedom from doubt, the protection, defense, the strength, the existence, right? And the increase of our race. That's their creed, man. Right? The nourishment of his children and the preservation of the purity of the blood. The freedom and independence of the fatherland, in order to enable our people to mature for the fulfillment of the mission which the creator of the universe has allotted also to them. Independence. Right? Independence, meaning self-government, self-rule, self-direction, self-determination, freedom, liberty, autonomy, sovereignty. The state creed. Talk about mature. So as a people, we've always been put in a position, those of us who are, the Black Americans from the South, and that whole history, right? And how they always called us, or they even still use the term when they say minorities. People love to say, we're minorities. What does minority mean? Is it the minority that you're thinking? Or is it the minority that they mean that you're a child and they're the parent? So if you are a child and you're still playing childish games, then you as a people are still childish, which means that people have, as a group, we have to mature. And as you see in this 14 words, right, they're saying that the nourishment of his children and the preservation of the purity of the blood, meaning what? The nourishment of his children. What is the nourishment? Is it just food, knowledge, development, preparing them to be the next in line, right? Purity of the blood. In their case, they're talking about not mixing their blood, keeping the purity of which is keeping who they are. Is it racist to do that? In these day and age, people will say that. But are there people in groups who keep their purity of their blood and do not mix to keep it of that? We know that the dialogue and the mindset is changing, but some people will even say that other people put that in there to water and mongrelize other nations. It's that people of certain understand what the meaning of the purity of the blood as into keeping that purity going. But when you got a mindset that you love everybody and everything is good and mongrelizing is what they say, then they say, well, then you just be a mongrel nation. Does a mongrel has any claim? Matter of fact, when you think about a mongrel, when you talk about breeding in dogs, you ever watch that, what they call that, the Breeders' Cup for the dogs? Do you ever see any mongrels? Or these be pedigree dogs, knowing who their lineage is, and they pure bred of whatever that brand of dog is. There has been no mixing. The pure, the more of who it is in it, right? So is that what they're talking about here? Freedom and independence of their fatherland. Huh? What is that? You don't have a country, right? They say, well, you don't have a country. So that's why there's a debate as to being aboriginals, and there's some that saying Africa. Somebody's trying to get claims to a land mass to try to say, I got a country. I'm in my country. Now everybody's not on board with it, but that may be what this is coming from and it's about. And so what's the mission? So again, we're talking about mature, going back to the mature part, that means to be full grown, to grow up, of age, the prime of life, knowledgeable, develop, come of age. Is that what's happening with us? Is that what we're starting to see amongst black people? That there is a maturing happening, and that maturing is not good in the eyes of other people? That they need you to go back to sleep and be a kid? Or is it the nation in itself maturing? So what is the mission? Mission is assignment, the aim, the goal, the objective, the job, the duty. What is it? Are we starting to formulate in our spirit to have a better understanding of what our aim, our goal, our objective is? And if so, is other people seeing it, and is things trying to divert it, to put it to sleep, to quail it off, to douse it out? But the one thing that I got underlined in there, that is all that's been said, that is decreed for them of this 14 words, also to them. So the creator of the universe has also allotted it also to them. Right? Yeah. It ain't all about them. That's from their side. So I guess in our position is to make sure you never get to that point. But, the greatest chess player tomorrow, and using alignment of spirit and planets and energy, Maybe that's what's happening here. There may be a maturing happening. We're seeing people are going after people about their doctrines, their organizations, and how they may have been against our own people. Going after them hardcore, hard body. Hey. And so some people are making that their life work. My hats off to you. Yes, there are a lot of people who have been in the way and been detriment to the collective. So if y'all mission is coming to this planet at this time and age, and that's y'all job, I ain't got no problem with you. So anyway, so ain't that something, right? 14 words, right? Yeah, 14 words. So let's go ahead and get to the end of this. We are almost at the 2-hour mark. I want to thank all of y'all for sitting up in here. But, you know, they say they're doing so much to show that, you know, we've been working since the Civil War to make things right. But I seen this part and I said I could not let this go without talking about it. A lot of people had talked about it. And, you know, can we get him one more again? Let's get him one more again first. Let's get him one more again, and we'll be back after this. Check this out.
And since the American white man has used his control over the press and over the textbooks and over all forms of media to make it appear that he has done us a favor by bringing us here and enslaving us, rewrite history or retell history. And since the white man can't dispute this truth, it's not hate to say that we were kidnapped and brought here, it's truth. It's not hate to say that we were Jim Crow, discriminated and segregated, it's truth. It's not hate to say that the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in this country, came up with a hypocritical desegregation decision 9 years ago, which they haven't enforced yet. That's not hate. And since the American...
All right, I think he did that a little too early, didn't he? So anyway, as you heard what Malcolm said, right? So there was this article that came out, a new project details newspaper role in lynching post-1865. A historian says newspapers were a pillar to uphold the white supremacy political economy. Let me say that again. A new project detailed newspaper role in lynching post-1865. A history says newspapers were a pillar to uphold the white supremacist political economy. Okay? So, you know, again, the woman sat there, Latoya, talking about how 1865 and how, you know, that, you know, they did so much to try to, you know, combat that and make that right. Right? So, let me show you what this article had talked about this, right? Let me show you something here. We got a little technical difficulties going here, right? Let's see. Okay, let's see. Yes. We have a little technical difficulties here, y'all. Not quite sure why that's doing that. Can we get that right? No? Alright, there we go. Alright, so let me tell y'all about this article here, right? Still been a little, there's something going on here, right? Okay. So, you know that there was I think her name is Sarah Haynes. She's on that View as well. And she is a journalist. So when we go back and look at the history of journalism in this country and realize how much it played its role, right? It's played its role in maintaining and being a tool or device used to propagate to the citizenry that end up being a part that's been, causing havoc for us living here in this country. And this article came out and talked about it. And it's talking about how printing hate, it's going to be this new series of newspaper, and how the role of the newspaper was instigating racial violence, hold on, really? What is this going on here? I got some technical difficulties, y'all. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. I don't know what is going on. I edit this part, huh? Okay, right, okay. I don't know what it was trying to do, but anyway. What was that? But anyway, so, again, it's going to be printing hate. This is going to be the newspaper, and it's how the roles of newspaper were instigating racial violence between 1865 to 1960. Now, remember again, the woman said that they've been doing great by them eradicating racism, and don't know why color of skin has been prevalent, right? That's what she said, right? That's what she said. So, newspapers were mouthpiece for white supremacist agenda. Newspapers often work with the white leaders to dwarf what they say black economic aspirations. Let me say that again. Newspapers served as mouthpiece for white supremacist agenda. Newspapers often work with white leaders to dwarf black economic aspirations. You know how, again, some of the newer adults born either like 90 and above, right? Some of them who are 90, right, and above, they have this thing that they look at and their ideals about how those before them and had no ambitions, or the things that they did seem to be like they could have just did this. No, you got to understand the system. See, and I think that's what a lot of y'all problems is that you never had the racial foundation, right? How racism and that being the foundation. And if you come out of people who did not inculcate that and try to prepare you to make you understand, it doesn't make you hate people because you know it. And that's the thing that a lot of people think, I'm not trying to be a racist and I don't believe in the color. It's not about what you believe. It's about the realism, being a realist and being understanding what is, not what you want it to be, not that you hope it to be, not the, this myth you got in your head, for what it is and what it is, right? So, thwarting black economic aspiration means what? Anytime black people were trying to aspire to make themselves economically independent, propaganda was used to divert it. And then they were also instigating the lynching and massacres that were happening through 1865 to 1960, right? As an apparatus, right? See, sometimes, you don't have nobody who's really talking and teaching this history, so how would you know, right? So, according to this project, it's a partnership with the Howard Center for Investigative Journalism. If I'm not mistaken, I think Walter Cronkite got something to do with this, or that's his schooling. And they're talking about how there's several universities, 60 journalist students, and they were selected to report and write about on this series. And so this book that's going to be coming out next month, and how it's titled Journalism and Jim Crow, White Supremacy and the Black Struggle for the New America. And talking about how much of the news coverage that was during this period of time and how it was upholding white supremacist political economy. You're talking about how the newspapers were affiliated with Southern Democrat parties as a mouthpiece for the agenda. Yeah, we're seeing today and how the Democrat Party and a lot of people who are feeling some kind of way now after you went out there and said you had to get rid of one and got you another one. And a lot of people quiet out here, right? A lot of people out here very, very quiet. So they talked about how they used the term, they called it soft power. And soft power was that they were storytelling power of their newspaper. Their storytelling power. This is what they were, soft power. They were telling stories, and in the story, in the details, in the innuendos, and in between the lines, the propaganda was being spread in the ideology of white supremacy. So a lot of times, so we're seeing that not also was parents who may have been bred by their parents, but the parents may have been bred because of the apparatuses of the system using newspapers propaganda that put this fear, to put this black building better. You understand? And so they would do political stories, economic stories, social stories. And then just the newspaper itself as an institution, they would use hard power of the news media, joining forces with politicians, political leaders. They was devising electoral violence against black Southerners. Now, you know, they always say black Southerners as if there was nothing going on in the North, right? You know, they always do that. But I mean, we kind of see that today. We were seeing right after the election and how they talking about voter suppression and all. Same old thing. Sometimes, you know, once you know the handbook, once you understand the play or got the playbook, doing what they did in Patriots, was over there getting signals and getting the playbook, then they know how you gonna run, right? So that's the importance of teaching history. See, history has to be known so that you know the playbook. So when you start seeing things that have a familiarity to it, you're like, oh, I've seen that play before, right? It's like somebody playing sports and you see them, you know, they run for a 46 dive or something like that, right? 26 dive or something like that. You know, I seen this play when he did the last time. I'm up on it. You're cracking this mug before he even get to the line because you read the play. So anyway, and they were seeing how these newspapers would spread lies agitating racial tension. As they've been doing that now. Matter of fact, we've seen it when other people talking about, you know, I did this, so I think everybody else should be doing it. And then they're using the people as these media characters to, you know, promote a certain hysteria, fear, anxiety amongst the people. And the people who are buying it and reading into it, they act on it. Matter of fact, they talked about how something like that took place and created the Danville Massacre. That was back in November 4th of 1883. And according to the report they had wrote at the time, they was talking about how these Negroes had evidently come to regard themselves as in some sort of rightful rulers of the town. They had been taught a lesson, a dear lesson, is true, but nevertheless a lesson which will not be lost upon them nor upon their race elsewhere in Virginia. See? So here's the newspaper writing about you incited, right? You incited the Danville Massacre by stating the things that you say were Negroes thinking they got some rightful ruler in the town, right? You riled up the troops, right? And then after the massacre took place, you came back with the rebuttal talking about, yeah, y'all taught them a lesson, a dear good lesson, right? Yeah, that lesson will never be lost upon them. And in Virginia history, they're never going to forget this, right? Keep them in their place, huh? And that lesson in that newspaper referring not just to the lesson, they were talking about lynching of black men, daring to leave their homes to vote. That's why I see so many people in here talking about, we died to vote. They were dying to vote. Okay, that's one. It did. It happened. And so they want to say that this type of violence was common of that time. And throughout the 1883 election season, they said Democrats incited racial animus inflammatory reports, commentaries about Negro misrule across the state. And so what it brought about, because the newspapers report raising fear of black political power in the area. Black political power. That's their fear. That if you got in power and you start doing the legislating laws and tactics of that soft war they've been doing, and you do it to them, well, can't we see why everybody now want to say we don't want to talk about race? Because there's a lessening of another side who was getting smaller. So they also found, doing some research in this project, they found that newly emancipated black people were starting businesses, being elected to public office. And so what happened is the white newspapers interpret in those papers that they were writing in them articles, they would say this is some kind of loss for white residents. Black people are getting elected to office. Black people are starting businesses. Run for the hills, the sky is falling. Creating hysteria. Right? Wasn't nothing done about this. Right? And they want to say this was common during that period of time. White newspapers always had a political agenda. What about today? Is it still there today? And then they talked about how black newspaper provided a balance. Well, let's say it today. White media versus black media. Is there a difference between the white media and black media? Or is there a difference between white media and social media that is doing their job? Social media networks like the black corner of the internet, that we became so prevalent to the fact that they had to rewrite the rules, change the game up. You're affecting too many people, you're changing their minds, so we're going to change these rules up. Oh, and they was doing it too. Right? They were doing it too. So the balance, try to balance, because see, if you're not heard and there's only a unilateral side being spoken, they're controlling both sides of the narrative. But once you give your side opposing and your points from your perspective, it balances it out. And some of the trickology that they're spewing and disseminating, we can all balance it. But when we're doing that, we're not getting the reach, we're not getting the numbers, we're being suppressed. So that tells you the power, and that history hasn't changed, even from Civil War time. As somebody liked it to say, right? And they talk about there were many black papers throughout that time period. And what they were doing was, they say, were against these institutions. Really? They said it was a thorn in the side for anyone who wanted to stop talking about, or who they wanted them to stop talking about white supremacy. Isn't it any different today? The corner has been quiet. So I'm back out here. They've been quiet about it. They're saying nothing. But somebody has to talk about it. It is part of the conversation. It's part of society. As much as we wanted to just go away, it's still there. It's not going anywhere. At least not yet, right? So, the newspaper, they were saying, had collaborated with white political and business leaders. And when they did this combination, get white political with business leaders, when that happening, black economic aspirations get dwarfed, and their opportunities. But people are saying, but you guys need to put something about a bootstrap. Well, in 1919, the Elaine Massacre in Arkansas happened, right? Now, the story was about 100 black sharecroppers who went to meet with the Progressive Farmers and Household Unions of America, and they were trying to organize a union. They were fed up with the unfair low wages. And guess what happened, y'all? Armed white men showed up to the church. Somehow shots were being exchanged. Men got killed, hurt. All because why? They were just trying to be equal. Hey, what's it, a hard day's work for a fair day's pay? Nuh-uh. So according to that story, talking about the governor ahead of time, he called for 500 soldiers. And so the newspaper that day had ran a racially provoking headline pushing hundreds of white people from outside their country to scurry and hunt and murder black citizens, based on what the newspaper had did at that time. According to what they say, at least 200 black people were killed. And that newspaper that was in Arkansas were conspirators to the white political leaders, were in co-conspirators with them. It wasn't only acting on their own, they worked with the white politicians. And including, they said, the governor. So it said that the white plantation owners, and covering up their racial massacre, it was all about squashing the economic hopes and works of black tenant farmers and sharecroppers. So a lot of people today who think about how they people haven't gone anything and think that we haven't thought about business, we had talking about passing down wealth, generational wealth. Oh, we've done all that. We've done all that. But you ain't had the histories to know that. Because you don't know that, you look today and you have disdain. Old niggas. There are some old niggas out here who just surviving, gone through the muck and the mire, had to go on what was being taught and learned of that day and what they understood. To all that, it took all that to get to where you are today, where now you have a better idea about what the trajectory is of what you're trying and your goals, right? Like going back to that 14 word in them the creed. So old niggas helped you to make this move that you're trying to do. So you thank them along the way for being that, to make you motivate and aspire to what you're trying to do. Okay? So we're talking about we don't have land and assets to pass is because it was always a system, always lurking, always underneath. Right? Ain't that something, right? So, with that being said, how about this? They don't like to talk about history, so I'm gonna do this, show you this, and we'll be right back.
How many buildings and monuments in Washington, D.C. were built by enslaved people?
We know for a fact that enslaved Africans were used in the construction of the U.S. Capitol and the White House. We know that for a fact because inside the National Archives and inside the collections of the White House Historical Society and the U.S. Capitol Society, we have the receipts where slave owners were paid for the rental of their slaves to build those two buildings.
Jesse Holland is the author of Black Men Built a Capitol. He published it in 2007, just 7 years after those receipts were found.
Somehow, some way, during the arc of history, this information got lost, either because we didn't care to record it, or for maybe we were ashamed of it as we matured as a country.
What about the Washington Monument? The first part was built from 1848 to 1854, while slavery in D.C. was still legal.
To this day, we have not found any written proof that slaves were used in the construction of the Washington Monument. But it's almost beyond belief that a major monument like that in Washington, D.C., that was started before the end of slavery in Washington, D.C., that slaves were not used at all. Here's the problem we have with this question. We're dependent on records that may or may not exist.
So right now, that's the only definitive answer we can give to this question, the U.S. Capitol and the White House. Adam Rothman, a historian at Georgetown, explains we are still searching for our history.
Well, history is actually hard work. In looking for the history of enslaved people, you often have to comb through really mountains of records to find the scraps of information that you're looking for. Then you've got to translate that archival research into the kinds of things that people will read.
But Jesse says it's also up to us to put in the work.
One of the things that I tell people all the time is that American history is in your attic. We need people to go through their papers, their grandparents' papers, their great-grandparents' papers, the family Bibles, the family receipt books. A lot of the history of our country is in those books. And that's how we're going to find out in the future more about the past. We all deserve a place and we all have a part to play in American history.
How many buildings and monuments in Washington, D.C.?
Hey, you sitting here watching the video. Why you sitting there? Put your hand on that like button, click it, thumbs it up, share this video, comment. You can like or dislike it. We don't care about that. And also, if you ain't over here and subscribe, what you waiting on? Get yourself over there and subscribe to get on up to We Up Report so you can stay up because we going to keep you up. That's how you help keep this channel going. You can also do some monetary donations. We'll tell you about that later. But right now, wake yourself up, like, share, and comment. And don't forget, when you subscribe on that button, hit that put all notifications. And we are back. Right? Washington, D.C., right? The nation's capital. Built by who? Built by who, right? Everybody, a lot of people, they don't really know nothing about that. They ain't talking about now. That's old history. That ain't got nothing to do with now. Does it got anything to do with now? Of course it does. You just don't want to acknowledge it, but it does, right? Right? I mean, let's look at that. Look at Washington, D.C., right? See how they water the Potomac River and stuff? Do you know they was selling us right there on the lawn of the White House? Think about the Blue Jug Jail or was it Blue House or something like that? All that, slave pen right there. They was, it was travelers taking us there and, doing business right there. Took part of Maryland and Virginia, and that's how you made Washington, D.C. This is why so many of us was in Virginia, but this is where they were tracking. If they weren't taking them from other parts and bringing them there and then going to Louisiana and so forth, right? So with that being said, right? With that being said, knowing that, right? And then said that we have the receipts to prove, right? So as I go ahead and get to the end of the show, we must talk about this. Because I want y'all to see something. Because remember, it's going to be our people being affected the most. And especially these coming generations and the ones to come won't really be affected by all the things that is taking place right now. So let's just say, did you see this here? Right? The White House considering payments of $450,000 per person to immigrant families separated at the border. Let me say that again. White House considering payments of $450,000 per person to immigrant families separated at the border. Ain't that something? All right, all this little history that I just said right here, and this ain't even the full curriculum, and probably never would be the curriculum. But in this little rendition I've done in this video, enough little history, start off with the view and the conversation they had, and then the woman who think that, teaching history and how it makes people feel shameful and that should be about the character and the value. But then when we look at that and say that they've been working to purge this hatred and racist and about color, skin, and we've gone back and we've been sticking to this history, and it's been seeming that it's been going ever since 1865, and ain't too much change. Then to do this after after all that's been done, you come back and you do this. But I want to show you something that a lot of people miss. I want to show you this because a lot of people missed it. And when you see it here, now let's talk about it, right? So let's go ahead and read a little bit from the people who didn't see it, right? So the Biden administration is discussing paying out hundreds of millions of dollars to illegal immigrant families who were separated at the United States-Mexico border under the Trump administration zero tolerance policy in 2018. The Wall Street Journal reported Thursday, right? So let's look at this. Discussing payment or discussing paying, right? Discussing it. Well, you know what a discussion is? Just somebody just talking, right? They talking about it. Just like when they talk about HR 40 and passing it, and then they're going to still do a study on it, right? For reparations, right? So here they discussing about it, right? And they're talking about millions of dollars, again, to who? Illegal immigrants, right? Illegal immigrants. They're going to pay out illegal immigrants about this, right? So this is kind of funny when you look at it, because, you know, a lot of people, this stirred up a lot of people. People was like, hey, man, what is this all about? How they just, you know, they in our face. But they say they're going to make it hard for next time around when you're asking for that vote, right? I think they kind of know that. But I think they got in a situation that, you know, it is what it is. So let's go a little bit more, because, you know, I want to get this as an end out. I want y'all to see this. Now, according to the Journal, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and Health and Human Services are considering the payments in order to settle lawsuits filed by the American Civil Liberty Union and the ACLU. Remember I said that earlier? Remember we was talking about that earlier? AC, take that mental note. Here they are. Now check this out. Now it's the American Civil Liberty Union and others on behalf of families who crossed into the United States from Mexico illegally to seek asylum. Okay? All right, so the ACLU is helping the illegal immigrants to sue the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and Health and Human Services, right? They're helping them based on what took place at the crossing of the U.S.-Mexico, right? That's who they're helping, right? Now, who is the ACLU? What do they really do, right? What do the ACLU really do? Does anybody really know? Does anybody really know what they do? I'm going to tell you what they do. And when I tell you, well, what I found out that they do everything but dealing with black folks. They say minorities, but they do everything from prisoners. But black folks, they don't do that part. They do everything else, but they don't do that part. Well, okay, but anyway. All right. So, the paper reported that the average demand in each lawsuit adds up to approximately $3.4 million per family. Let me say that again. The paper reports that the average demand in each lawsuit adds up to approximately $3.4 million per family. While the settlement offer being mooted, right? Being mooted. Mooted is being like discussed. Or let's say we bargaining, or we gonna haggle it. By the Biden administration amounts to around $400,000 per person and close to $1 million per family. Okay, all right. Let's keep that in mind. $3.4 million per family. Being mooted means, well, how about we what about $450,000 per person? See, 3.4 per family. Right? Let's try to do it about $450,000. See, this is negotiation here, right? This is negotiating with, right? Now, I don't know if anybody was talking about that. I want y'all to see this. Now, approximately 5,500 children were impacted by the Trump administration, the zero tolerance policy in 2018, according to the ACLU. 5,500. Keep that number in mind. 5500, right? 5500, right? The journal reported that the ACLU has identified approximately 5,500 children affected by the policy, which advocates say caused physical and mental trauma, and children who were taken from their parents. So far, around 940 claims have been filed by immigrant families. Okay. We're going to have to do some math here, y'all. I think we're going to have to do some math here, y'all. You're going to have to do some math. Let's do some math, y'all. Let's do some math. Let me pull my calendar or my calculator out. All right. So they say, right? They say there's 5,500 children, right? That they counted. ACU has said it's 550 children, right? So let's say we're going to times that by, we're going to go with the mooted number, right? They said mooted. So we're going to go $450,000. Right, that's right there, right? That's good. All right, so what is that? 2.4. So you mean to tell me if you paid out the 5,500 children at $450,000 each, that is $2.4 million. Let's say $2.5 million. Wait, did I say million? Hold on, scratch that. Wait, hold on. Scratch that. 2.4 billion with a B. $2.4 billion, right? That's just the 5,500 children, right? Wait a minute. 2.4 billion, right? All right. But they said, wait a minute. Hold on. Go back again. Hold on. They said there was 940 families who already claimed. 940 families who claimed, right? So that's 940 families who claim, and let's say if they getting 450,000 each, but the word family doesn't tell us, you know what I'm saying, how many in the family. So we're just going. This is just each one. This is one person. That's $423 million, right? Right? But okay, 423 million. Now let's add that 2.4 billion. Let's see, that was 475 million. Right. That's right, right? Okay, what's the total of that? 2.8 billion, 2.9 billion. What they say? 3.4 billion? Okay, so they close. So okay, so if we take that, okay, so let's just put it this way. So that's 450,000, but if they was doing, let's say if they was asking for what they said per family. 3.4 yeah, it said 3.4 million per family, right? And 3.4 billion or 3.4 million, right? And a family. And we knew there was already 55. Right? Well, we can't say that for family, right? Okay, so basically what they're saying is, okay, this money gonna be about almost $3 billion, depending on if they can keep it at the $450,000 range, which means that ain't even. That's just what they threw out to the public. And then remember, they also said that this is going. Now let me show you what they say. Hold on. Let's go back in there. Right. So approximately 5,500 children affected. Right. 904 claims have been filed by the immigrant families. Right. Let's look at this. Hold on. I'm about to end this. Hold on. Okay. And let's see. So, right? Depending on how much is doled out. Now, see, again, they have not specified the exact. Remember, the Biden administration is trying to get it down to 450,000, right? But remember, they said originally that each family, 3.4 million each. Now, what is a family? A family of 4, right? Let's just say typical family 4, mother, father, daughter, son. That's 4, right? All right, let's just say that. 4. I mean, okay, this is, we already see what that 2.8 billion, 2.9 billion, right? But they say, settle each claim, the cost of taxpayers could approach 1 billion. See, they make it approach. No. You've seen that number. You've seen what 5,500 kids at 450,000 added up to $2.4 billion plus the families of 900. That's just, okay. But what about the rest of the families? That was only 940 families, right? Or 930, whatever it was, right? What was it? What was that number again? It was 940 families. We don't know how many more families it is. And that was at $423 million. That's what goes on $3 billion. And they talking about in the paper $1 billion. So, huh? You damn right black people upset. You damn right they upset. You know why? Because, man, does that make sense? Does that even really make sense, man? But let's look at what really how they got here, because a lot of people didn't explain how they got there. They didn't get into that, right? Right? So let's look at this. Now, remember they talking about families. So again, we talking about men, women, children, right? And accordingly, when you're talking about refugees, asylum seekers. Now, what is qualifying them to be that is when they're supposed to be fleeing from war, persecution, political turmoil, right? Those are the things that are used when you're trying to, categorize them. Now, when you're talking about a refugee, now a refugee would be a person who has fled a country of origin and they are unable or unwilling to return because of well-founded fear of being persecuted because of their race, religion, nationalities, membership of a particular social group, right? What else could be those type of things, right? It could be nationality, membership of a particular, right? Political opinions and things like that, right? Now they say once they fled from their home, then they have to apply for refugee status. Now let's look at this, y'all. How do we ever hear them say they don't know how many immigrants are in the country? Because I'm not saying that people can't sneak in, but the people that come in here are applying for a certain status to get into the country, right? And so once they apply for their refugee status, let's say they're trying to be a refugee, now an official entity, maybe a government or a United Nations refugee agency, they're going to be the ones who's going to determine whether they meet the definition of what a refugee, and whatever they claim is what the fear for them running has to be substantiated, right? That has to be substantiated, right? And so the process of obtaining refugee status, it could take years before they could get that, right? So a lot of the applicants be waiting in refugee camps, living under, they say, dangerous conditions. Now they say refugees are not permitted to enter the destination country until the application has been accepted, cleared for travel. So that's a refugee, okay? That is a refugee. Now, I'm pretty sure once I said that, what went in your head? Something went in your head. I know something should have went in your head like, hey, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. Wait a minute, hold on. Are you trying to tell me something, Mr. Blows Your Mind? All I'm trying to tell you is the game. I'm trying to show you the game here, right? You got to know how the game goes if you want to understand how it's played, right? So let me show you something. Let me show you something. I know what y'all thinking. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. But let me show you this to show you what a possible refugee. Okay. What would you determine this individual here? Let me show you this, and we'll be right back. Check this out.
What do you want for your people? I'll be honest, I'm here today because in my country, with the hurricane that we had, it's kind of terrible, and we got a president that he's not helping the population, and we're in a bad situation. I'm coming from way far away from Roatan, and
Where is your family?
my family, I left them home. I know the kind of robbery because I don't have no internet, so that they can check me and see how I'm doing. And I'm here today because I'm dreaming to get to the U.S.
What is happening now with the pandemic?
Well, the pandemic, it's messed us up a lot. I used to work tour guide, tourism, and we on the island, we're not receiving no tourism because
You are from Roatan.
I'm from Roatan. Born and raised, islander, and that's where I will live.
What do you want for your people?
What I want for my people, I just want patience and pace that we can get to the U.S. because they're having a new president, where's Biden. He's going to help all of us. He's given us 100 days to get to the U.S. and give us legal mental paper so we can get a better life for our kids and family.
What do you want for your people?
All right, I think we are back, right? So, where does he qualify at? Based on what you heard him say, right? Is he a refugee? Does he qualify as a refugee? Does he qualify as a refugee? Well, remember what a refugee said, right? Okay. They had him on the mic, but you see who was all in the background and they ain't talking. But he might have just messed himself up based on what he just said, right? Now that you understand what a refugee is, right? Well, what an asylum seeker is, right? Asylum seeker is someone who is seeking international protection. What they say, danger in his or her home country, right? Asylum seeker must apply for protection in the country of destination. It must arrive or cross the border in order to apply. So something about being at that border, and then you're getting it to apply. You're trying to say asylum, right? Trying to get international protection. I don't know. Did he qualify as an asylum seeker? Or was he a refugee? I don't know. So, according to them, that everyone has the legal right to seek asylum. Everyone. According, this is a signatory from the 1967 United Nations Protocol through the U.S. immigration law. The United States has an obligation to provide protection. Let me say that again. Everyone's legal right to seek asylum, according to them. A signatory from the 1967 United Nations Protocol through the United States immigrant law, and the United States has an obligation to provide protection. Did y'all hear that, y'all? The United States has an obligation to give people protection. Why is that? So the asylum process, when they're seeking that, can take years to conclude. Again, refugees can take years to get resolved, just like asylum seekers can take years. And so when the person files their application, and then it has been determined that they have credible fear through the screening that they do, they can receive a hearing or interview, and that date could be years in the future. They could be here years and still haven't complete the process. And then ultimately, once they get accepted, they can receive asylee status that's going to grant them relief from deportation and the right to work legally in the United States. Now, remember what that brother said? He was leaving because tourism, left his family back at home, don't have internet, right? Was he saying that he had, you see what I'm saying? See, they don't see, this is what history does. When you know the history to the game and then you know how they doing it, you say, oh, that's how that go, right? Okay, so what status did that brother fall in? Matter of fact, let me give you a visual about this other one. Let me give you the visual, because you might be like, okay, I heard that, Mr. Blows Your Mind. I heard what you said, right? So did that brother, did he qualify for that, or no, he didn't qualify for that? Well, how about this one, y'all? This was recently, right? Remember this one? Let's see. Can we do this one? Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that one then. Okay, remember this, y'all? Remember this? This happened not too long ago, right? Remember this? And that was big news, and you know, a lot of people were upset, and people saying, oh, black Americans, y'all didn't advocate on for them and all that and good stuff, right? Okay, now, I just told you two parts to the game. One is a refugee, the other one is asylum seeker, right? So, when the Haitians were there, again at the Texas immigrant or the migrant camps under the bridge, right? What status were they falling under to end up getting them deported back? Because again, remember, according to the asylum seeker and the refugees, it could take years, and they had to, to apply for the application to file for refugee status or asylum seeker. So what was the difference between what happened with them and the other two? Well, there's another status that falls, right? It's called economic migrant. Let me say that again. Economic migrant. An economic migrant is someone who leaves his or her country on origins of purely for financial or economic reasons. Let me say that again. An economic migrant is someone who leaves his or her country purely for financial or economic reasons. An economic migrant chooses to move in order to find a better life. They do not flee because of persecution. There is no such thing as economic asylum. So, they do not fall within the criteria for refugee status and are not entitled to receive international protection. This is what happened with them in Texas. Then you heard that brother that was sitting on there, and they put him on camera and had him tell his story. Was he an economic migrant based on the story he said? So you already know what they probably did with him, right? Oh, this, We Up report. We gonna give it to you. We gonna give it to you straight. When nobody else won't do this, we do this. If you ain't subscribed, you better get yourself over here and subscribe, because I'm gonna keep bringing some good stuff over here, right? You get what I'm saying? So anyway, now, according to this economic migrant, now they may ultimately settle in their destination country, right? Like you see on the screen they were trying to do, right? And then they can be considered an immigrant, right? They could be considered an immigrant. Now, economic migrants do not lay down roots in their new country. They can be there for seasonal agricultural labor work. They can be a few months in the United States. They can earn some money to bring back home after the employment period, right? So they take you out for a little bit and let you come in, make a little money, and get out. Do you know that, when they talk about the Haitians that were considered economic migrants, remember they said in 2010 they went up in South America due to the Olympics, right? But there's another story too about what about the ones that came when Haitians kicked them out because they was purging out the voodoo priests and all them. Remember that? And nobody remember none of that? Oh no, nobody remember none of that. No, nobody remember none of that. Oh, they did do that though, right? Let's see. Can we do that? Should we do that? Now, some people are gonna be mad. Yeah? I don't know if I'm gonna do that. I don't know. We won't do that. We won't do that because we're not here to shame. I'm trying to bring the game, right? So I ain't gonna do that. I ain't gonna do that, right? So let's look at some of the difference here. Refugees settled in the United States, they have certain rights and access to assistance. They get loan for travel to the United States. They're eligible for medical and cash assistance. Non-for-profit supports, right? Let me see what the ACLU doing, right? Yeah. Let me give you one more thing. Let me give you the crux to the whole thing. Now, as soon as they arrive, they may legally work immediately, have rights to file vacation, to have family members still abroad join them. Remember, he said, my family is still back there. What do you want for your family? So he think once he get in, get settled, he can bring their family, come right on in. 1967, something between the United Nations and the United States have an obligation that they're allowed to make people come here. What is the trueness of that game that we don't understand? Something to that game we just don't understand, right? We think we understand the game, but we really don't know what the game is, because they're not here. That's not their job to tell you. They ain't here to tell you the real game of that. No, they're not, right? So anyway, right? That's what that was, man. That's what that was. They were considered economic migrants. So that means that these here that's getting this money, what happened is they got their rights. Remember, they said in 1967 that according to the signatory of the 1967, the United Nations and the United States, and that signatory law that every person has the right for asylum. Well, when you didn't let them come in, whether maybe they applied for the application or whatever, and Donald Trump and them stopped them from coming, now chickens coming home to roost, and now they suing. And this is where that money is coming from, y'all. A glitch in that about them not having due process, ACLU and other groups decide they're suing. And that money is going to fall back on whom? Right? Okay. Can't say you didn't hear it here, right? So, that's going to be our show for today. So, to say that history is not important in teaching white kids and making them feel bad, well, none of us don't know the history. We all getting buked. We all getting taken advantage of. So the key is teach it in its entirety so everybody know the game. But obviously the game is something more that we don't understand. Because for some odd reason, in our house, it's like basically we have a foster center. We have open house. Anybody can come here if they can prove that the reason why they came here, we're going to let you in. Then how can you prosper? Or who is prospering? Well, y'all tell me what y'all think. I didn't cover everything. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of stuff that I said. You might be agree, disagree. Go ahead and comment down there. Like, dislike, share. Help this channel to grow, man. Help a brother out. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. If you show me that I'm worthy, I'll keep bringing it. So, into my next show, y'all. Let's give one more of this, and we're gonna ride out of here again. This is We Up Report. I'm your host, Mr. Mrblowsurmind. Until let's see, to the next show. Y'all go ahead and take care of your business. And I'll see y'all on the next show, y'all.
Tonight, let us make them remember. This is Zion, and we are not afraid!